Today I'm going to cover one of the saddest I've read. They actually brought a photographer to this, and these are actual photos taken out of a newspaper dated 1925, September 24th. And I don't even know the guy's real name. 17 years old. They called him JP in one newspaper, LQ in another. There's some things that are not up for discussion. It was a little town, a Rocky Ford, and it was just over the state line where a 17-year-old timber cutter was kidnapped by a rob and 2 days later burned alive on a metal stake to which they tied him by the neck, the hands, and the torso. Now, from the description of the other paper, I can tell you that it was very gross. They made him, quote unquote, confess the crime. Then they laid sawdust on his feet and all around him, piled it around him, poured gasoline on the sawdust, and once the fire got going, they poured more wood on it. Now, this is a 17-year-old boy, 17, who was, all he was doing was something like plants on the side of the road, minding his own business. And the story goes that an unwed mother, Bessie Gaines, was reportedly raped as she picked peas in a field by the house. Bloody and bruised, she said the rapist was a black man. The sheriff formed a posse, and the posse came along, a group of young males, including Ivy, cutting timber. He took him into custody, but for some reason the finger was pointed at Ivy. Fearing riots, officials transported Ivy to Aberdeen, several counties away. A mob demanded that the county send him back so that the victim could be identified. It's reported that 4 suspects were brought before the rape victim, and he identified Ivy as the attacker, but she wasn't sure. The sheriff made an attempt to bring Ivy back to a safe place, to Tupelo, but was stopped on the road by the mob, and they grabbed Ivy. The lynching was absolutely gruesome. It is known of that event comes from an unnamed university student's 1977 interview with eyewitnesses. Rutgers' article notes that the student prefers anonymity because of threats of punishing him for doing the paper. A Memphis newspaper reporter who happened to be at the scene offered the following account. Now, somebody was there taking a professional photography. This is a professional photo taken for the newspaper that you're looking at. This man wrote, "I watched a Negro burned at the stake at Rocky Ford, Mississippi, Sunday afternoon. I watched an angry mob put a stake into the ground. I watched them pile wood around the helpless body and watched as they poured gasoline on the wood and set the wood on fire. I stood in a crowd of over 600 people as the flames gradually crept nearer and nearer to the helpless Negro. It went higher and higher and circled him without mercy. I heard him crying out in agony as the flames reached him and set him on fire. Oh, God, he shouted. I didn't do it. Have mercy." Now, this is a 17-year-old kid. He kicked the chain loose from his ankles, but it still held his waist and neck against the iron rod, becoming red with the intense heat. "Have mercy. I didn't do it. I didn't do it," he shouted again. "You shouldn't do this to me," someone shouted from the crowd. Then there was an instant of silence, and several voices rose in agreement. Nowhere was there a sign of mercy among the members of the mob, nor did they seem to regret the horrible thing that they were doing to the Negro that had supposedly sinned against their race and died of torture. Soon he became quiet. the man's name was Roulhac. There's no doubt that he was dead. Through the blaze, I could see the Negroes struggling to be supported. Now, this picture was taken by a professional, and it shows supposedly him confessing to the crowd. It shows him being tied to the stake, and it shows him standing there with the noose around his neck. Now, 17 years old, and they just murdered him. Thank you for watching.